Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Sean Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Well, hello, Soul Forge friends. This is a special unexpected surprise podcast episode for you. Now, you're aware that the Soul Forge podcast is about life, the universe, and everything. It's also a place for me to share either personal experiences or experiences of friends or colleagues or other people that I've come in contact with somehow. Well, something exciting happened this week. As you know, I do another podcast called The Rusted Robot. And a famous guy that I know reached out to me this week and asked to be on The Rusted Robot. He has a podcast that he's promoting, and it's coming out this coming week, and he wanted to be on the show to talk about it. Well, it was such a great interview, and I had such a good time that I thought I would share it with you folks here. Now, what you're going to hear was intended for the Rusted Robot podcast, so it's going to sound like I'm talking to the Rusties, as I call the Rusted Robot folks. It's such a great interview, and I had so much fun. I wanted to share it with my Soul Forge apprentices, all you good folks. And if you folks could actually share it with all the people you know, that'd be highly appreciated as well. Larry Nemecek is a Star Trek author. He's been on web series. He's been around the Star Trek world for years and years. He's a great guy. He's been on The Rusted Robot 2 times before this 3rd time. And so I'm going to share it with you here. I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, the Soul Forge is a very open concept show. And normally the episodes come out on Thursdays, and you're getting a second episode this week on Sunday because Larry's new podcast is coming out on Tuesday, just a couple days away. So I wanted to get it out there as far and as wide as I could, help Larry out. He's a great guy, great guest. I hope you enjoy what he has to say, what we talked about. It's not really a personal thing like most of the episodes are here, but that's the beauty of the Soul Forge. We can talk about anything. We can have any kind of guest. We can do anything. If you guys want to be on the show, send me an email. We can talk about whatever you like. That's the design behind this podcast. So with all that rambly stuff out of the way, why don't we go ahead and we'll dive right into my interview. Not really an interview, more of a chat with Larry Nemecek. It's about 40 minutes. So it's longer than what you're used to, but it's good, and I think you'll enjoy it. So here it goes.
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
All right, Rusted Robot listeners, I have a special treat for you guys now. Making his 3rd appearance on the podcast, we have Dr. Trek himself, Larry Nemecek. Hi, Larry.
Woo, hey, lucky 3. Okay, we have a ways to get till 47, but we'll work on it.
Hey, we're getting there. We're getting there. So, how are you?
I'm doing well. Things are in my life they tend to be too crazy busy, but usually with a good outcome. So,
oh, good. That's good.
A lot of good things, and we have Trek back on TV finally. The fallow years are over finally. So
finally, we waited forever. What do you actually think of Discovery?
I'm good. Well, I'm back and forth, but overall I love it, and I know that some of the people who are making it are old. I say old Trek fans, and I mean that with all the love. But it's been an interesting show. We can get into this, but I think a lot of people don't realize exactly how it's almost been three shows in one. It's almost had 3 evolutions. We laugh about how Star Trek series take 3 years before they settle down and get good.
Yep.
And I would suggest to people that measure, what is that in the Discovery years? It's only 15 episodes,
yeah.
But it's almost been like if you stretch that out to 7 years at 26 eps a year, it's almost like it's about on schedule.
I think you're right about that. Now the thing is on the Rusted Robot, me, I love the show. I think it's fantastic. And my co-host Josh, he hates it, and he actually stopped watching after episode 5. So I try to get him to go
Wow.
back. Yeah, he anticipated it. He waited for it, and he couldn't stand it. And I think it's great because I think they're subverting all the expectations, just like The Last Jedi did.
Well, right. And well, here's the thing. So I have reservations about the visual canon mainly.
Yes.
And I'm fine with the Klingons. I'm all for some species diversity. I think they'll get around to that. I mean, there's the reality side of my brain, and then there's the hopeful fanboy side of my brain.
Yeah, I agree.
And the business sided, I know how Hollywood is. You know, here's the world. And I always hope for a compromise between the two at best. And if one leans the other way, that's great. But just being on the air is a business decision, right?
Yes.
But the other side of the practicality is the evolutionary hoops the show has already jumped through, and the fact that somewhere along the way the project didn't implode.
Yes.
You know, which shows, we can get into that, but it shows like the importance of Star Trek and the importance of how CBS was bound determined to launch their all-access service, and how it just happened to be Star Trek was what made sense to launch it, just like it made sense to launch UPN with Voyager.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I love the show. I love the way it's evolving. I think that's I think when this is all said and done and we look back at it in hindsight, rather than the valleys between the peaks, like right now we're in the show to show to show moment, which is annoying. And I think 3/4 of our discussion, you know, will go away, just like it would have with any other show, except this is the first show of the social media era. So the discussion in between shows seems 1,000 times bigger than it ever did for Next Generation or even Enterprise.
Yes.
Because it is.
Right, because we're right in the midst of it, so we can't see the bigger picture.
Well, and we have a million channels. We have Twitter and Facebook, and we have podcasts, and we have all of this, you know, air noise, airtime, online time to talk about it. And it just feels like it's more than it was, in the Next Gen days or the rerun days when you would talk about it with 4 or 5 of your closest friends, right? Or you would get on a message board and maybe 10 or 20 other people were talking, and that seemed like a ton of people.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, but no, we're watching the whole world fly by talking about Discovery, which is awesome.
It is.
In the big picture, and there's a lot of little wrinkles to this, but no, basically, I'm loving it. I think it's bending, and I've talked to couple of the writers. It's bending our way, their way. It's just been kind of a raging. It was like a runaway freight train, not a runaway freight train, but a freight train that was headed to one destination. They decided to tilt it toward another slightly different one, and you know what that means. So, but it's mainly the visuals. I'll say this, mainly, you know, the touchscreen consoles, the holo viewer, and some of those things that make you sound like a techie little nerd.
Yeah.
But it is canon. If you're going to say Prime, there are those things. The Klingon look, I'm fine. I say species diversity. We just had the Tellarites and Andorians this last weekend, and I guess the world was breathless about what I thought of the Tellarites. But and I was okay with it, because on one hand, this is supposed to be mirror universe and ragtag rebelly.
Yeah,
you know,
for
type
sure.
of thing.
It is.
And no one since day one on Journey to Babel has done the hard-snouted Tellarites like I would prefer, except for what I did on the Phase 2 New Voyages vignette that I got to play a Tellarite in. But it's all good. It's all good. I'm just glad to see them there. I hope. I have this gut feeling that the more that Discovery is on, the more it will be the show that most people want to see.
I think so too. We just have to give it a chance. Let it breathe and grow.
Yeah, but my biggest, and I think this will come out. I think it's coming out between the lines now, but it's also what I've been told, and it's there in the record. I just, you know, it's one thing to know facts. It's another thing to realize what they mean. And just like it's one thing to say this is going to be a streaming show, 15 episodes, standalone shows, but they're all in a 15-chapter arc, and it's streaming once a week. And it's one thing to hear all that, and it's been 12 years since the last Trek was on TV, and the world has changed. Storytelling and TV and big TV, peak TV, cinema event TV is a thing now. But it's another thing to experience all of that and see what it means, aside from the intellectual, yeah, I get it. And I think we're still in the middle of that. People are still absorbing what all of those different tenets mean. There's more here than just the Trek. There's a lot going on, and everybody who was brought up on just like all the original series people, there's a lot of the original series people never started watching Next Gen.
Exactly.
For one reason or another. And we're in that same kind of, but then eventually it all blends together and people see it as one big, you know, box on the shelf. So a set of, it's like a big shelf.
Yeah, I think we're in the third age of Star Trek is where we are.
Ooh, that sounds like it needs a little brass plaque. Okay.
I think so, because we
The
had
third age of Star Trek. Yeah.
It's true, because we had the original series, and then we had Next Gen to Enterprise, and then it sat dormant for a dozen years, and here it is again, third time's a charm.
Right. Well, in 80, and we've, it's funny because I got so used to saying, modern TV Trek versus the original. And you can't say that now. And it seems like the term that's popped out. I mean, I've said it a few times and I heard other people say it. So I don't know who gets credit, if credit is even doable. But the Berman era is kind of funny to hear 87 to 05.
That's right. That's my Trek. I like TOS, but I wasn't around for it. I was born 10 years after it started. So it's not really my Trek, although I love it. I love it all. So
What's not really your Trek?
well, the TOS, because I wasn't alive for that.
Oh, okay. Well, a lot of people haven't been alive for a lot of things.
No,
when you say it's not really yours, you mean you'll watch it, but it doesn't resonate, or you mean you just can't know it the way it is, the Trek that you experience firsthand.
Exactly.
Nothing else can ever. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was 11 years old in 1987 when the Next Generation premiered, and I was there when Deep Space Nine came on, and Voyager and Enterprise, and when you were waiting week to week to week, and there was crossovers and that kind of thing. And people who watch it now for the first time, they don't get that. The nuances is gone.
You were there for Best of Both Worlds summer.
Exactly. That's right.
Well, that's it. See, that is the thing. For a long time, the only gap was between people who saw the original series. Well, there was primetime NBC original series, and then there was the rerun baby era, which was different. That was different, and that's what I am. I always said I'm a rerun baby. So the 10, 15 years of just, even when the movies were running, you still, again, that was 2 hours every 2 years, and it's not like you gave up watching the original series just because the movies were coming out in 79 and 82 and 84 and which is what built up to the Next Generation. The demand finally grew to the Next Generation being a viable economic, audience demand thing.
Yes.
But for so long, the only gap was, were you an NBC primetime watcher, or were you a after school kid that watched it at 4 or 5 every day after school, or at 6 in the evening before and that was the two dynamics. And then when Next Gen started, and a lot of people dropped out of active fandom, or their life changed, and they were still a big Kirk, Spock, McCoy 60s fan, movies, but they didn't keep up with all those shows that are on.
No, that's right.
Which is amazing. But then in turn, those shows, starting with Next Gen, the original audience, it was 10 times bigger than it had ever been for the original series, which itself was huge and was the first Dead show to be resurrected as a movie, and then Dead show to come back is not just a crappy little tacked on, bonanza of the Next Generation, but actually a thought out, we spent bucks on this, concept for a show and a wider universe and a franchise, and creating all these terms before they were buzzwords the way they are now with, the Marvel DC, or the DC universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and all of these things that are concepts now. And Star Trek was just doing because people wanted that, and it made sense. And yes, there's 2 series and a movie on now, as icing on the cake. Again, it's all part of the stuff that Star Trek pioneered, and now it's like textbook case. But back then, Star Trek was doing it because nothing else had ever affected people that way.
That's right.
And moved people that way. And people weren't media savvy and media available the way they are, ongoingly. Nothing else could sell VHS tapes and then DVDs.
It's true.
Like Star Trek,
nope,
right?
You're right.
So what had there been? You had rock, you had movie stars, occasionally hyperstars, and rock bands. You had Elvis and the Beatles, and before that you had Bing Crosby and Rudy Valley and Rudolph Valentino in the 20s. I mean, the media age, you would have a spike with a superstar, but they were always individually focused, and not until Star Trek did you have and Shatner and Nimoy aside, maybe, did you have like a concept like this that's done this. So anyway, and now it wrote the book, and now it's no big deal. And we have Comic-Cons every other weekend, at every town of 500 or more people. But yeah, it's changed. So Discovery, the gulf going into Discovery, has been a paradigm shift in a lot of ways. And it's, people act like, and I love the Orville too.
Oh, for sure.
People act like the Orville is their refuge to get their Trek. And I'm like,
it's true.
That's fine. That's wonderful. That's fine. That's what it's for. Although I think Seth MacFarlane is aiming for a little bit more than that, and maybe Fox isn't happy with him trying to aim for a little more than that. But yeah, I just think a lot of the stuff is we have to marinate. But if older fandom and veteran fandom is the noisier, louder one because they know all the ropes and the channels, the JJ fans, it's been 10 years now almost, but the JJ fandom and the Discovery fans, the people who are coming in with those, maybe quieter now unless they've grabbed the channel somewhere and got the mic or got the mouse and they're talking into it. But I think they'll eventually very quickly be heard if they're not being heard already. Maybe YouTube stars and podcasters and Twitter channels are giving them a voice right now. But I think older fandom always overlooks the newer fans coming into their peril.
I think so.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think it's something I'm very intrigued with. I want to really listen, because this time it's not just it's not just the subject matter and the way the show Discovery is done, but it's realizing that we're in the streaming age, we're in the premium channel, the binge watch age, and people, if they're first time coming to Trek, even if they're watching an old series, they're experiencing it totally differently than the way everybody has up till now, just because of technology and media, and the idea that even streaming that Discovery is coming out once a week, that's almost like a throwback notion that's kind of cute. So it's like in the middle of everything else being so accessible. I like it that the streaming kids are having to get Discovery once a week, and it didn't just, which I knew they wouldn't do that. It didn't just drop a whole which would have been a whole waste, right?
Like Netflix, yeah.
Like on online demand time. And all the buzzword, all that would have been lost if they hadn't done it a week at a time. But so anyway, it's a nice throwback to them getting it that way, which older fans don't even think about it.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah,
there's so much cool stuff about right now. People who are like narrowly focused on. That's why I have my fanboy bits like, Hall of Viewers, But then the producers are saying, we hear you, things are going to happen, and when you factor in mirror universes and universe jumping, and maybe somewhere we've been Prime adjacent or we've been Mirror adjacent, and we're not really into there's all that stuff. So until they say that and move ahead with a second season, what's the point aside from
And I wouldn't be surprised if they're not in the Prime timeline to begin with, and they never were.
Say that again.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were never in the Prime timeline to begin with.
They were never in the Prime, right. If they were like Prime adjacent or something,
just slightly off.
Yeah, and they pop in and they have subdued palette velour like Pike and.
Yes.
Although David Allen Mack has already tried to retcon things and gap smooth a little bit there, and say that only the Constitution class ships had those style uniforms.
Yeah, so. I haven't read the book, but I've read reviews on it, so I'd like to get my hands on that.
But I think when the time goes by, we'll look back at this first season of Discovery and realize time will show how it really went through, the Brian Fuller startup, and then the transition between the Brian Fuller team and the eventual team under Aaron and Gretchen, and then when they were free and clear to maneuver.
Yes, that's
clear
right.
And free to maneuver, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was like space. It was docked, then in space dock, and then now it's out going through warp maneuvers, and so that's why I'm really excited to see after the break what they come back with for their second season. But,
that's going to really show what it's all about.
Yeah.
Other than Star Trek Discovery, I'm sure you have other things going on.
Yeah. Well, did I hear you say something about a podcast?
Actually, that's true. I did. Now you know that the Rusted Robot's been going on for 4 years and change, and this is your third time on it. Last summer, what I did was I started a new podcast called the Soul Forge Podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's not a geeky thing. It's more personal stories and growth and progress. And I don't have a lot of listeners. What I should have done was actually gone on other podcasts and spread the word.
Well, you can still do that.
Oh, I can still do that. And I think spreading the word by interviews with other people is a good idea. Do you think that's something that you would like to do one day? Maybe start up your own podcast?
Well, how about this, Sean?
Tell me.
How about we start right now?
Okay. What do you got for us?
What I got for you is take a look at this. Fancy you should say that, because January 23rd, and people will be hearing, in the future, if you're listening to this as an archive, you'll know already. But no, Rod Roddenberry came to me
okay.
after years and years. I love coming on your show, on other shows, other podcasts. But years ago, when the podcast boom started, I thought to myself, should I jump in and host my own?
Yes, the answer is yes.
And the answer is yes. Well, there were so many by then. There were lots of good ones and many, many more maybe not so good ones. But a lot, good or bad, a lot of people are analyzing shows. They're talking about current events, or they're doing both, or they're looking at whatever it is. I didn't just want to throw my podcast on the pile. I didn't just want to be more same-o, same-o. Well, I had a couple of ideas, but I knew they were going to be, a little more involved. So I had plenty of other things grabbing my time.
You're a busy guy. What do you have going on?
Yeah, well, I mean, my documentary, The Con of Wrath, that I've been, trying to wrap up now after 6-7 years here. We've just been doing it a little bit at a time, which was the plan, but now we're landing that. And launching my Portal 47.
47. 47.
No!
Fan experience business, which, again, my thing is, I was lucky enough to, I was a fan. I got to write the Next Generation Companion, moved to LA, experienced so much of the Berman era and after from a front row seat. My wife worked on Voyager. I helped launch StarTrek.com, worked on the experience at Vegas, and I've been lucky enough to be a convention guest and convey a lot of the firsthand witness Trek experiences that I've had to people, and had a hand in on creating some of them. And just knowing the people and keeping an archive of somebody doing so many end-of-year interviews that I've got, their audio, and now switching over the last few years to video, but so much of that recorded in firsthand experience and just knowing people and having people's trust. And so much of that has not been out in the general. I mean, you can only do so much with even, convention appearances and interviews and DVD extras. That only still is scratching the surface of the amount you get with some people and even the people.
Right.
And that's what Portal 47 is all about. Our where no savvy fan has gone before, when we your in-depth guide to more backstage Trek, like a mini-con all year long from wherever you are, that we do over the internet and live. But even then, there's so many more angles of Trek to get out there. And so, Rod Roddenberry is running the family's legacy there, and they've donated a lot of papers to the UCLA archives. Like Nick Meyer has a lot of his papers at his alma mater at the University of Iowa. My good friend John Tenuto and his wife are going in and doing a lot of research out of Nick Meyer's papers there. Not a lot is coming out other places, but last summer, Rod Roddenberry and John Champion, who
Mission Log podcast,
right, which was the flagship Roddenberry podcast, and they've since taken on a couple of other ones that were already in existence.
That's true.
But they came to me and said, Rod said, I want to do something we've got even more of my dad's papers and files and letters and memos and things that are still not in an archive yet. They soon will be, but I want to get them out in the world in a new way. And he and John, and then me in the mix later, came up with the idea for, drum roll, the Trek Files.
The Trek Files? Is that a new podcast?
That is a new podcast, yes. Thank you for asking.
Are you going to host that?
I'm going to host that.
No kidding. When does that come out?
They asked me to do this. We've been working on it, but it will debut January 23rd. So if you're hearing this later on, it's out there. Very simple. It's under the Roddenberry Podcast Network wing, Roddenberry Podcasts. You can go to podcast.roddenberry.com and subscribe, or find the way, your podcatcher of choice is in there, iTunes and all the rest. It's also like Mission Log. It's also on the Trek FM network and feed. They carry it too. We may wind up a few more places.
Wow.
But it's very simple. It's 15 minutes every week. Comes out on Tuesdays. It'll be out once a week. And myself and a guest are pulling one document out of the pile. It might be one page. It might be 20. We have a little highlight section, but we talk about it.
Okay.
We, in the context of its own time, in media, in Star Trek's development, in Gene Roddenberry's life.
Oh, wow.
And in the people, some things are from Gene, some things are to Gene.
Oh, okay.
So it's who was involved, what was going on with this tale. And, they're from the 60s, they're from the 70s, like all the movies that were trying to happen didn't happen. and they're from the 80s.
Wow.
So in all the fallow time then, and when Gene was a little on the outs, when Harv was running the movies and he was trying to find his footing, and then was given the keys back again with Next Generation, but his health was failing.
Yes.
He only was around for 2 or 3 years. So 4 years actually. So they're pieces from all of that era.
Okay.
And we start off with a piece that's not so rare, but Rod wanted us to start with the original pitch for Star Trek, because there's a section in there that is relevant to today. So hopefully everything we do is fun for history's sake, but is shedding light on people just coming to Star Trek, just coming in from the JJ movies or from even Discovery. In fact, we have another piece that is very much from the 80s going into Next Generation, but I fell off my chair because it spoke directly to a verbatim line in the pilot for Discovery.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We have another piece that is going to make history, I predict, that we'll have, because I had no idea. Another document we found, I had no idea existed, and it's amazing, and it will have the Trek world abuzz for ages. I mean, we'll have headlines for it. So I'm really excited about the whole series. And I'll shut up. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm
so excited.
I know. Me too. I have some questions.
Sure.
Are 15 minutes going to be enough per episode for these?
No. Not. I'm sorry. My Okie got in the way there. 15.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, that's only 15 minutes.
15.
Yeah.
Well, as you're finding out now, reminding, and as all my hosts over the years that have had me as a guest will remind me, they're saying, I don't believe it.
Exactly.
No, we do. Here's the thing. If a document is big enough that it deserves more attention, we split it. We have multiple episodes.
Okay.
So, but sometimes we have something that's just a page. Sometimes we have some really simple things on the surface, but that they kind of unlock. We have a cute little letter that Rick Berman wrote to Gene soon after they got acquainted, before Rick was a producer, when they were developing the Next Generation. Some really simple moments, but it's like, what do they lead to, right? What's the little glimpse we get into Gene's world, into the Trek world, into the world of TV and or media in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s.
Next question. How many episodes do you have in the can already?
We've got 12 or 16. We've got a lot. Yeah. We've had this. We were working on this in the summer and the fall, and originally the idea was to debut in the hiatus break for Discovery. So, we wouldn't have to compete for attention, right? And then we had the holidays to dodge around a little bit. So the ducks all finally came in a row for now. We let Discovery get back out there and let everybody get that excitement out of their veins. So hopefully there's a little bit of space out there in the bandwidth.
I'm sure there is.
People to take notice here. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. And I have one final question about the podcast. You said each episode you're going to be talking to a guest.
I was going to say, yes.
Okay.
So go ahead.
First of all, is it a different guest every week? And second, can I be one of them eventually?
Well, let me see. We're doing, since it's only 15 minutes. It's a great format to have guests, and so we're doing everything in batches.
Okay.
So this first round of shows, maybe even a couple of dozen episodes, I've had 3 guests, but each one has done 4 or 5 episodes. So John has been my guest for several. In fact, he's my guest on the first 3, but then after that, there's a mix. So Dave Rossi, who started as a fanboy page at Paramount, a PA on the shows, and wound up being Mary Howard's assistant and then Rick Berman's assistant. His guy for licensing projects, and finally an associate producer on Enterprise, and was one of the producers with the Okudas on the original series remaster project when they Blu-rayed things, and had a lot of decision making and input there, and a good friend. He's a guest, and then here's a name you may have heard, Dorothy Fontana.
I have heard DC Fontana, yes.
DC Fontana was kind enough to come over and sit with us through 4 or 5 episodes and comment on some relevant pieces.
That's amazing. I can't wait to subscribe to this.
So, yeah, and of course it's a podcast. It's a freebie. Again, podcast.roddenberry.net, and that will point you to places. But also the real-life living hub is just the Trek Files on Facebook.
So like it on Facebook?
Yes, like it on Facebook, and then go there every Tuesday. And here's the deal. The document that we talk about is also there. We scan those each week, the new document of the week will pop up at the same time the episode does. So people can go read it, download it, follow along with us, read it ahead of time, whether it's several pages or it's one page, which is going to be very cool. So, the Roddenberry's been putting out document dumps at times. They watermark things and are getting a lot of archives out there, putting scripts out, that kind of thing. So this is, in that manner, but these are just at our page. These will be the docs for that week. And then that'll be the place to comment on the episode after. So it's all centralized. It's all in one easy peasy place to go to.
Perfect. And I'm guessing there are so many documents. You could do this for 10 lifetimes.
Just about. Right.
Right.
And like I said, the pilot show, the episode 1, is not a rare piece. In fact, if you call I don't care what generation you came in, if you don't eventually get around to reading our first document, I want to rip the little Star Trek name badge off your resume.
Right.
right off your shirt.
Off your uniform, yeah.
Off your uniform. It's Gene's original pitch back in '64.
Oh, I'm sure I've read it. I must have.
But of course you have. And anybody that was was an originals era fan who had Stephen Whitfield's Poe's Making of Star Trek classic book, that it's not verbatim, but he reprinted so much of the original pitch in there. Mm-hmm. But Rod wanted us to start off the show. Rod's executive producer.
Good.
And he's guiding. He's not actively giving notes back. He did on the first few episodes just to make sure we're on the same voice. We were pretty much there.
Like he does with Mission Log.
Like he does with Mission Log. Mm-hmm. Like he does with Discovery.
Yeah.
As an executive producer. But he wanted us to start with highlighting a specific segment in that pitch, which underlies what all real, as much as fans love to talk about, it's not true Star Trek, that's not Star Trek. Here's what Star Trek is. As much as anything, what underlies the Star Trek notion and actually speaks to our times once again, just in a broad cultural sense. So I thought it was, it's really funny. After all these years, it's a two-sided coin. About 5-10 years ago, when I was, when the world kind of blew up, when Viacom divorced and the Berman era ended, mm-hmm. and the Decipher and the fan club that I had been working with, Communicator Magazine, all but went bankrupt, and they dropped their license. And everything I had known, the people I'd worked with, everything went topsy-turvy. And on top of that, the internet and the digital revolution was happening, and we didn't work with Dead Tree Media anymore, right? And mm-hmm. business models and all of that, everything was upended. It's like, well, what now? And I was trying to find my way back. Everything was topsy-turvy. And anyway, it's since that recovery has come back, I thought at the time, maybe this is the time that I should shift gears. Maybe I should go sell shoes. Maybe I should get back into journalism, although journalism was, as it was known, was on its last legs. And I thought that everybody had heard everything. I thought it's been 20 years, it's been 30 years. People have heard all these stories. They know all this stuff. And the internet is coming along. Things are online now. Memory Alpha was starting to come along by then. Wikipedia. Nobody needed me or anybody else to tell them what had been happening. And what was amazing was I realized really quickly that after I yelled at some of the headlines I'd see on the news sites, like, this isn't news, this is 20 years old. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. We have so many new fans coming in every year, even if it's all on the internet, and it's not, mm-hmm. that you can't possibly, by the time you talk to every single person involved backstage with Star Trek who had a hand in it, it's a drop in the bucket.
Exactly.
There's just a tiny fraction of what's even available, much less if people actually go deep dive through what's on the internet, right?
Oh,
that fraction that is there. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, I get it. This is new to tons and tons of people, millions and millions of new thousands of fans every year coming along. And I went, okay. And it was very gratifying to have people say, when I first started doing podcasts and going, oh my God, I thought, I'm going to tell all my stories and I'll be out before I've ever done anything with them. And A, that hasn't happened. But B, people saying, I could just listen to you for hours, Larry, which is scary to think about. But that was very gratifying. And it dawned on me that we have all these newer, younger, not just even younger, but newer fans mm-hmm. who weren't around or didn't have the firsthand, like we were saying earlier, the firsthand experience of anybody can go. I realized this with the European fans, and now it's everybody. we have a whole, eventually the original series fans will all be past.
Yeah.
Eventually the next gen DS9 Voyager Enterprise fans will be past.
Mm-hmm.
The people who saw things week to week originally. And it's so cool to watch all the young fans and new fans say, shut up, you people bashing Discovery. I finally have my own Trek that I can watch every week.
Exactly.
Your one friend notwithstanding. So, it's a whole mix of those people. And I realize that there's a lot of good still to be done, the show trivia proper, but also the context of the show and the times and the people behind it, and whether they're still with us or whether they're not, and whether they've been heard from or not and deserve to be heard from. And the further back you go, I don't care if you were the second assistant janitor for craft service. If you were there and knew people and could talk about them and make them come alive for us today from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, that's valuable. That's valuable in all these aspects. And so that's kind of that's what Trekland is all about for me. So doing this podcast is a way to bring a little bit of that in little capsulefuls, little nuggets for people, and show a little bit about what Gene and the people he worked with, reveal a little bit more of that too.
I think it's a wonderful endeavor. I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm going to download it I wish it was more than once a week.
Now, Sean, there's plenty going on out there. I hear they're even doing a new Star Trek show now. So,
Oh, I heard something about that.
But no, and it gets back to the point of, I said I didn't want to do a show on my own. I still have my other main idea I want to do, and we hopefully will start working on that now. But when Rod came to me with this idea and John worked on a format, I was like, I'm there. We can do several at a time. We can have guests. We can get out I hate to say new content because it always sounds like dog food to me. Like, here's another can of content.
Right.
But we can open up so many new facets and insights for people that I've never seen before, much less other people.
Oh yeah.
And add that to the tapestry of what's there and just add that in. So my own little personal goal of not having just more same old, hearing one more person talk about one more old thing. We are, but hopefully it's all kinds of new old things. So new angles, new insights,
It'll be new for somebody.
Yes. I need to keep telling myself, all of this is new for somebody, which is wonderful.
And you know what the thing is? Even if I've watched an episode of Star Trek 10 times, I'll watch it 12 more times. I may have heard the story once. I'll hear it 10 more times. I love hearing it. And I think I'm like most Star Trek fans. And everybody just wants to soak it up and get as much as they can, even if they've heard it before. And
you just remind me of something else. You know what? The coolest thing is watching an episode for the 10th or 12th time and still finding something new.
Because you do. I have.
Yeah. Even if it's just your eye notices its original series and, oh my God, there's a piece of duct tape sitting where the bridge red rail, somebody forgot to take it off when they filmed, right?
Yeah.
I saw a clip just today, or somebody somewhere on some site had a frame grab. It wasn't something special. It was just Riker, but it was a rear angle on the D bridge where they're up against the aft stations looking forward, and up on the ceiling piece there's like a black square. And somebody said, I wonder what that is. And my first thought was, that's hidden. That's an angle you never see. It's very high. That was probably some kind of a mounting bracket for light, because they were always notoriously having to deal with lighting on that bridge. And then Voyager and DS9, they started building in the set design included, lighting things. And I saw somebody down below had taken the time to write to Marvin or Dan Curry or somebody who was online before I had a chance to, and they said, it's a mounting bracket for a light instrument. But you know what? But that's exactly what I mean. There'll always be questions and the race for answers and understanding. And, the years go by and we don't have a lot of the creators with us forever.
Well, that's right.
So and it's so easy. Any fan of anything, the shiny, bright faces out front are who you glom onto, because that's obvious. That's what sells the show. That's what makes it come alive. And we love the actors. But when you get to a certain point in your fandom, you realize there's so much more beyond what you're going to glean from the actors in an interview, seeing them on stage, live, and you love them, and they're the charismatic machines, Oh,
yeah.
But the overall depth of Star Trek is going to come from the writers, producers, just the first step, and then all the creative designers below that. And then when you're really at that level and you just enjoy, then you're watching the extras in the background that don't get any credit and you don't hear them talk, and you get to that level, the stunt people and and all of that. And that's what I love doing, and that's what Trekland, and that's especially what Portal 47 is about. And the Trek Files is another angle we can bring that out. And again, it's something that I don't think is out there anywhere. So I really appreciate Rod and John coming to me and asking me to do this. So
it's terrific. It's a deep dive behind the scenes. I can't wait to devour all the episodes. So just to reiterate, all the stuff that you're doing, where can people find all that stuff?
All the stuff. The best place, I guess, is still LarryNemecek.com, my website.
Okay.
And you can get to Portal 47 there. You can get to my store. You can get to the Con of Wrath that we're trying to wrap up now in our post time. And at Larry Nemecek on Twitter, which is the same as my YouTube channel. And at Larry Nemecek's Trekland is my Instagram. Yay. And I also have a little thing. I don't know, it's not widely been out there, but every week on Facebook, again, I have what I call Facebook Trekland Tuesdays Live on Facebook. So if you go to my Larry Nemecek's Trekland Hub page on Facebook, I do a 15-minute or so live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific.
Okay.
So 4 Eastern, and it's there for the Europeans to get it at 9 and
10.
Yeah,
I think.
9 and 10. Yes. So 9 in the UK and 10 in the continent. And anyway, it's just 10-15 minutes. It's live. People can yell back at me. I have an offbeat topic, and my B story every week is following along the Parrot Analytics, which is a metric for measuring the online expressions of Discovery and all the streaming shows that don't have actual Nielsen, hard viewer data. But it's one apples to apples way to compare week to week and show to show what's going on with Discovery. And that's a lot of fun. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that. So I had somebody, put me on to watching. But anyway, that's on Tuesdays, Facebook, 1 o'clock Pacific. Trekland Tuesdays Live. You just go to my page. And then they're archived, so you can watch the old ones. But they tend to be topical.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of reacting to what's gone on in the Trekverse. But again, I'll kind of just brush aside and talk very briefly. If everybody's consumed with dropping the F-bomb that week, or they're all consumed with, what the Andorians and Tellarite looks like, whether good, bad, or indifferent, I'll kind of talk about that. But I always try to step back and take a bigger picture look at some aspect, and then maybe talk about something I'm doing too, or where they overlap. But anyway, I invite everybody to come in and join. And if you're there live, pop in and make a comment, and I'll try to say something if I see it going by.
Perfect. I love that idea. You're going to be the king of the 15 minutes.
Well, sometimes the Facebook Live stretches to maybe 18 or 19. But,
well, sure.
Yeah, but on the Trek Files, John keeps me honest.
Okay.
John's basically kind of quasi-directing the shows while we're there. So, no, we stay pretty honest with Trek Files.
Okay, sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Good,
all
thanks.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and I can't wait to have you on for a fourth time in the future. Once you have another project, or you're wrapping something up, or you have something else to promote, we'll have you on again.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thanks a lot. And we're all just watching Discovery. I know what's funny is all the writer-producers, they're working right now as we speak on the second season. That's one thing about the streaming format. The time lag is so off. With the old shows, like 26 a year, I wouldn't even try to talk to anybody until they were basically done with the year, mm-hmm. and they would know that even though there were a few left to air, we were basically done. And even though I was I was pretty trusted insider all those years I was working on the companion book and afterwards. But the time lag now is so off that even though a lot of them appreciate me, I don't think they're comfortable. And CBS, the whole nature of this with the serialized streaming focus and the fate of a whole new corporate entity riding on Discovery, they are so hyper, tight-fisted. Plus, they have the After Trek show, and
right.
And it's all these aspects that we've kind of slid into them, whether we were Trek fans or not, with social media and what are the after shows for Game of Thrones and the Talking Dead and
all those ones,
now it's a thing, right? The after show is a thing, and I'm glad to see Trek representing there, and they're holding into that. But it's social media, so it's a new landscape. But even given all that, it's wacky to know that waiting for the shows to air to talk to them, that their memories are already fuzzing out, especially on this front end when it went on for like a year and a half instead of a shorter period, right?
True.
Right. The R&D for Discovery, I mean, and through from Brian to the transition to.
Mm-hmm. Well, it took a long time to get out.
Right, and we'll have, the statute of limitations will have on people's comfort zones or contractual obligations that'll eventually dissipate, and we'll have more of that come out as it goes along. But not for the gossip factor, but just we just are curious how and why things are that. Or at least I am. And that's the way I've always been.
The nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I had the keys to the Communicator magazine, that's what I did. When I have a book, that's what I did. And we live in a time now, like I said, everything blew up, and it was like, go west, young man, and start your own platform and brand and media. So since the late aughts, and that's what I've tried to do. And so thank you for helping me do a little more of that. Let the word out a little more.
My pleasure. I'm always happy to help.
Command codes verified.
So that was a lot of fun. Could have kept talking to him for hours, but it's life. We all have things to do, and he had more interviews to do and more promotions to get out there. But that's something that I wanted to help him with, and I hope you'll check out the Trek Files. I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll talk to you guys again on Thursday. I don't know what we'll be talking about, but it's going to be exciting. So just stay tuned for the Soul Forge. Check your feed. Make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss any episodes. So thanks again for hanging out, and remember, find what you love and let it kill you. This has been another episode of the Soul Forge Podcast. Contact the show by emailing soulforgepodcast@gmail.com or by tweeting soulforgepod on Twitter. Visit us at soulforgepodcast.com, and remember, the best way to show your support is by leaving a 5-star review in the iTunes Store. And, if you would, please check us out and like us on Facebook. The Soul Forge Podcast was written, produced, scored, edited, engineered, and directed by Sean Vanderloo. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Darth Vaderloo. For more great content, you can listen to my other podcast, The Rusted Robot. Thanks for stopping by the Forge. We'll keep the fires lit until your next visit.
I could do this all day.
This has been a Valley of Vanderloo podcast production, all rights reserved.
This transmission ends now.